Years as a member of the UAW has taught me one thing that every auto worker should understand, is that it is impossible to reform these unions. These unions exist, and they exist to perpetuate capitalism. And that is their main goal. I was born in Dayton, Ohio, and I grew up as a child during the Great Depression. My father was a union representative who was, politically speaking, had leftist ideas. The ideas were simply trying to reform capitalism. I understood at an early age, even though my father was not a Trotskyist, at the same time, he did consider himself a communist and a socialist. And for that reason, I grew up with that thought in my mind that there was something other than capitalism. And I can remember when my dad and we had strikes, and they called in the National Guard to put down the strikes. The government did. And these were, of course, Democrats as well as Republicans. And to think that today you're being told by some union officials that you can trust these people to stand on the side of the working class when they've never been on the side of the working class, not ever. And I think you have to grasp that and remember that, never forget it. That's one of the things that drove me toward socialist politics. Before I became an auto worker, I worked in a foundry. But like most people around here in Dayton, the foundry made auto parts. Everything in Dayton was connected to the automobile industry. And no matter what kind of job you had, it was a halfway decent paying job. You were working doing something to help build an automobile. I joined the Workers' League, the forerunner to the Socialist Equality Party, because during a national election, they were the only ones outside my plant who were passing out pamphlets that were against the Democratic Party. George Wallace,
That's right,
was the candidate, was running in the primary in Michigan. And the Democrats never said anything about George Wallace, and we all know what a right-wing racist he was. But the Social Equality Party had a pamphlet where they exposed all of this about him. And that drove me in the direction of that party. And I went to a meeting to hear what they had to say, and I was impressed. I was really impressed. And they were the only ones ever to explain the difference between Stalinism and socialism. You know, everyone else had tried to put the two together, that Stalinism equaled socialism. Well, as I was in touch with the Workers' League, like I say, the forerunner to the Socialist Equality Party, I found out there's a difference. You know, that the Stalinists were the murderers of the leaders of the October Revolution. You know, they assassinated Trotsky, and they actually did more to discredit socialism than any capitalist could ever do, simply because they passed themselves off as socialists. As a member of the Workers' League, I learned about Trotsky's struggle against Stalinism, which actually was the struggle for the human race. Because without the elimination of capitalism and Stalinism, there could not be the existence of the human race. We have a situation now where here in Dayton, Ohio, there are no GM plants left. They're all closed. They're empty slabs where once there were thousands of auto workers who made a decent living, you know, not great, but decent. And now there's nothing. Dayton, Ohio is becoming like a graveyard. Kids are turning to all kinds of antisocial behavior, such as getting involved in opioids and things like that, because they don't see any way out. This meeting by those auto workers in Detroit is a good lesson for everyone. That's the way forward. You know, you must organize against capitalism as a system, and it must be done on an international basis. Dayton, Ohio is not an aberration. What has happened in Dayton is what's starting to happen globally. I mean, you have workers in Kia in Korea, Bulgaria, France, everywhere. The ruling class is cutting jobs, cutting wages, cutting benefits if they ever existed in the first place. The policies of the capitalists are such that they're leaving us from one war to another war to another war, headed in the direction of the destruction of the human race itself. All of this is with the approval and the assistance of the union bureaucracy everywhere. These unions are tools of the ruling class. When they came into existence, they were that. Even though militant workers forced them to move to the left somewhat, it was just a charade. They weren't intending on staying the course, and they never have. They were just forced through circumstances to move to the left. In other words, they were always right-wing organizations that supported capitalism from the very beginning. Now, it seemed it kind of fooled most workers, because most workers understand the need of the working class to join together as a unit to fight. There's more strength that way. But only if the workers themselves control that. And there's no control with the labor unions. The labor unions are tools of the ruling class. They always have been. They always will be. And there's no point in kidding yourself about that. I was a strong union man at one time before I knew better. You know? But in time, you become conscious of what's really going on, and you should know. Back in the 1970s, under the leadership of the Workers' League, the forerunner to the Socialist Equality Party, we were forming an organization called the Trade Union Alliance for the Labor Party. You know, and lots of workers were interested in it. But even back then, the more perceptive workers, they had a suspicion that if the union bureaucracy was involved in it, it was not going to work out. It was going to be betrayed by them, which proved to be the case. And that would be the same today. If anything, if you organize anything and involved that union bureaucracy with it, I mean, you must be a complete break from them. You know, they are the linchpin that holds workers to capitalism. And of course, the vehicle they use is the Democratic Party to do that. You know, you go to any union hall or in Ohio and in most places, every time there's an election, they're touting Democrats, vote Democrat, vote Democrat. And things continually get worse, even when Democrats are in there, which is now workers are beginning to understand that. And so because workers are now becoming conscious of that, they're going to say more and more, vote Democrat. They're going to say, you did just enough of you didn't vote for the Democrats. You know, and now the Democrats, under like people like Bernie Sanders and some of these other people, are calling themselves socialists. Right. Because they understand that you can't sell capitalism to the working class anymore. So they've got to find something to sell. And so they're selling off these Democrats as socialists when they're not socialists. They're Democrats. They support capitalism to their dying day. This meeting where you discuss workers' committees to take over their own leadership is an indication of workers being, quite frankly, conscious of what they must do. And that's to me is the whole importance of the whole thing, is being conscious of what has to be done. the only way that you can free yourself from this terrible wage slavery today and the threat of war that's looming before us all is to abolish capitalism as a system. Only the working class has the power to do that, but a power that they must consciously use and be conscious of their power instead of thinking that you can't do anything because these people are rich and powerful. That is not the case. The case is that the working class is a lot more powerful than the bourgeoisie. You know, it's just a matter of organizing itself properly. And that means organizing itself into the Fourth International. This year is the 80th anniversary of the Fourth International. So it has existed and has fought all that for the last 80 years for the liberation of the working class. No one else has done that. And so I would ask people to join the Fourth International, wherever you live, whatever country you're in, wherever you work, or whatever job you do. It is your only salvation. It is the only way forward for the human race to survive and continue to exist.